that makes it exciting. So anyway, just a couple things to watch out for, things that you won't find on your title report that may be important to you. If you guys have any other questions, we're up on the 4th floor. Ask us anytime. Thank you.
I think you waited a time.
Yeah, well, Brandon Plant's here now.
Yeah.
So is Jesus.
We can start.
That's right. I don't think there's anybody else that needs. Anybody else want to make an announcement? Other than Rick? Just kidding.
Right?
I don't think there's anything else coming up this week.
You can erase one of those.
There is.
The 12th of June.
Yeah. I'll just erase this because we're going to do it again. So it will be in July. Mike next week, next Thursday. Try not to miss that one. 9 to 12, then lunch after that. So
After or
after.
before?
Lunch after.
Oh.
Yeah, they decided to try that. That way if you leave early, you don't get lunch.
Yeah, bummer.
Yeah.
Plus, Mike will
Yep.
freak out if you're just eating and not paying attention.
Yeah.
He will attack.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that chicken taste good?
So, but there should be some good information that he'll present.
Can
and it
we
goes
bring
by fast.
outside people into the meeting?
Sure.
Great.
Yep. Yep.
How can I get a shirt like that?
Be him.
No, I think in that store, in that new store, they're going to give, I think they're going to start doing shirts.
I think so.
How'd you get that?
Those are shirts for weightlifters, aren't they?
I had a client that does graphics design and does that back east, moved back east. I just sent him the logo and he sent it to me.
Wow.
And they're sold with that.
Sounds really proactive, Brandon.
Yeah. No, they're cool.
I like it.
Yeah, we
Do that on a lot of them. Okay, so today we're going to talk about listing presentation, and I'm going to run through some information on giving a good presentation, what needs to be included in your presentation, and then there's 2 presentations in your script book. There's the one that we chant in the morning, the Mike Ferry one, that's on page 60, and then there's one on page 78, which is the Century 21. Actually, it's not 78, it's 75. It's a Century 21 listing presentation. We're actually going to talk more about the Century 21 presentation today than the Mike Ferry one. They both have the same kind of a structure, but I like the Century 21 presentation because it kind of fits my personality. So look at whatever one you want to, memorize one, learn it, internalize it, make it a part of your business. When we have a presentation, we're able to get to the point faster. We're able to lead them through on a direction that we want them to go, which is, where do we want them to go? To a close. We want them to sign a contract. We want a deal. Are we just going out to visit with people?
No.
No. When we don't have a presentation and we don't have a direct path to get them somewhere, we're just going out to visit. And unfortunately, when we go out to visit, that's what we end up doing, and then we come home, and then our mindset starts to go down because we just wasted a couple hours. So that one became really clear to me after I had wasted a few hours doing that and realizing that my ego is what's telling me that having something written down and memorized doesn't work. That's what my ego kept telling myself. But then when I finally decided I got to write something down, I got to get it memorized, I got to get it internalized, and then I realized that I'm leading them through a path. I'm helping them through this process. So we're going to talk about some things today, and I want to be really clear on something. What's the difference between manipulation and persuasion?
Intention.
Your intention. The process is the same. When you're manipulating somebody, you're using the same techniques we're going to talk about. It's the intention. Unfortunately, when you're manipulating people and you move through the process a little bit further, most likely they're going to find out about it, and it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation. Or your integrity is going to go really down the tube.
Did you say unfortunately?
Unfortunately, that they're going to find out? No. Yeah, unfortunately for you, but fortunately for the process. Yeah. So we want to make sure that we're doing that. So first I want to give you 6 things to a great presentation. It doesn't matter whether you're presenting or for a listing agreement, or if you're presenting for a buyer, there's 6 things that need to be part of this presentation. You can even be presenting to a spouse or giving a presentation, in an office or something like that. All these things apply to it. So the first thing a key to the presentation is you've got to have rapport. Another way to say that is a connection. If you're not connected with the people that you're talking to, you're not going to be able to do anything. You're not going to help them move forward. Rapport, connection. Another word for that is they feel comfortable. And when someone feels comfortable, they allow you to lead. It's another reason why we're going to work through some of these scripts and through an actual presentation, because if we are the responsible party to lead them and we don't know where we're going, we've got a problem.
It's like a pilot that doesn't know where he's taking you.
Yeah,
Exactly.
he's got the fundamentals, he gets up there, and then he just kind of goes around, right? Absolutely. So comfort allows you to lead. This is all about rapport. So we're not going to go into the details of connecting rapport, but I'm going to give you these 6 things real quick. Number 2, you've got to have some kind of value. If you're talking to somebody and you don't have value, you're going to figure that out pretty quick. I heard this saying once that, let's see, what was it? A smart man doesn't open his mouth. What is that one? I'll think about it. Just say it. It's gonna. Yeah, they're going to open their
A
mouth.
married man.
Yeah.
A
You're
married
better to
man
keep your
doesn't open
mouth.
his mouth.
Yeah, you're better to keep your mouth shut, because as soon as you open your mouth, all doubts off the table. They know exactly where you are.
Yeah.
So basically, if you're gonna lead them, you got to have some value. Number 3, you got to separate from the competition. Think of the presentations that you've been to. If you've ever gone to like a Tony Robbins or some kind of a presentation, what do they usually start their speech or their talk with?
An intro of who they are.
Intro of who they are. Okay, that intro is describing why they're a little bit different, why you should be listening to me. Okay, if I came up and I said, well, I started real estate last Friday. I've never given a listing presentation, but I do have one written down and I'm going to teach it to you. How would that be received?
Oh, he's one of us.
He's one of us. Yes. So rest assured, I have it written down. I didn't start Friday, and I have given the presentation multiple times. So we want to separate ourselves from the competition. Now let's look at the listing presentation specifically. If we don't separate ourselves from the competition, what happens? What is the deciding factor?
Commission,
You're just like everybody else.
like everybody else.
You're just like everybody else. There's only one thing to negotiate, right?
Money.
It's the money. It's the commission. This also comes down to a mindset. If your belief is you're the same as everybody else in this room, when they drop your commission, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to be okay with that. It goes to when you're working with family members. Okay? You're working with a family member, you say, well, I got to give them a discount. If you don't believe that you're different than the other agents, you'll give them the discount. You have to believe this yourself and then express it. And as we go through the presentation, I want you to watch for these things as well. 4, there's got to be a level of trust. They've got to believe that you're capable of getting the job done. Number 5, it's got to be a level of feeling, or another word would be reduce risk. Why do you think a for sale by owner goes for sale by owner?
Because they want to save money.
They want to save money, okay?
Have control over it.
They want to have control over it.
They believe they can do it themselves.
They believe they can do it themselves. Okay? There's a level of risk that they've weighed, and they say, me doing it myself has these risks here. Using a real estate agent has these risks. Your risks are higher. That's why they're not working with you. If your risks were lower than their risks, would they use this every time, right? Does that make sense? So we want to be able to reduce risk, help them feel safe. How do we help somebody feel safe if we don't know what they're worried about? You've got to ask. Okay, and then the last one. What do you think the last one is? And a good presentation.
Close.
Good close.
You got to close. Every good presentation that doesn't end with a close ends up not being a good presentation. And we'll talk about this in the presentation, because what we find is that we'll do this, we'll get some rapport, we'll get some connection, we'll present our value, we'll work on our separation, they'll trust us, they'll feel safe, and we'll say, let me know what you think tomorrow, and we'll be fine. And that's what your close is. Just, we want to think about it. Okay, you want to think about it. Sounds good, call you tomorrow. So, that one we're a little bit nervous with on the close. And I'll show you some strategies we can use to get this. The key to an easy close is a great presentation. If you have your presentation down where you know what you're going to say, you know how to say it, and you're comfortable with it, it's going to lead to an easy close because you've already set yourself up for that. When you start winging your presentation, this becomes awkward because you don't set yourself up for a close. You can set yourself up so that it leads them right into the close. Okay? Persuasion, manipulation. Should I be closing them? This is a question you need to ask yourself. Based on what I've said, based on what they've said, should I be closing them? Does that make sense? Any questions about these 6 or comments on that one? Thoughts? Yep.
Number 2 and number 3, I'm not seeing a lot of
Difference between the two?
Yeah.
So separating yourself can be the value that you bring. But here's the thing. There's a lot of value that needs to be presented to sell the property, right? It needs to be expressed. So I'm bringing Century 21 brand, I'm bringing my own expertise. These are value that I'm bringing, right? Separating myself from competition is I want to make sure you understand. What I usually say on this one is most agents do blank. What I do is this. Does that make sense? And I'll show you more of that as we get into the presentation. Does that make sense?
When you're talking about reduced risks, what are the things that they aren't afraid of listing with us for? What do you mean? What are the risks that they're afraid of?
Yeah, what are the risks? Great question. Let's open it up to everybody. So what are some risks? Mike?
The number one complaints is my agent never calls me back. I can't get a hold of them. I think that's a big risk when you're talking about the biggest sell or purchase of a lot of people's lifetimes.
Yeah. So they're feel risk based on that. Right.
Length of contract.
Length of contract.
Tied down.
Yeah. What if they had a bad experience with their last agent, and their last agent said, well, our contract's 6 months, you're stuck for 6 months, and then they don't do anything for the rest of it because they knew they were going to lose the listing. You're going to have to face, there's some risk there. Okay? What about the risk of for sale by owner? I work with a real estate agent, it's going to cost me more money than if I sell it on my own. That's a risk. Anybody else? What other risks could a seller have?
Are they aware of the legal risks they're running?
Yeah, legal risk. Yeah, there's lots of legal risks involved with it. Okay, just the disclosures alone.
And especially in this market, well, in any market really, they're not confident on price. Like they want to make sure, am I going too low? Am I going too high? And if they start getting showings and offers, they're like, did we price it too low? You know, so there's risk involved there, and setting expectations for what's going to happen reduces risk and reduces that in their minds.
Yeah. Yeah. So just pricing in general can be a risk. Can be a risk on both sides. See, there's risk with using a real estate agent. What if you have a real estate agent who's never done a pricing and they price it wrong? So I was working with an agent that used to be in our office. He's no longer in our office, but he called a for sale by owner up in Farmington once. The guy in Farmington had his home listed, just put it on the market for $525,000. And he called him up and he said, you know, I think I can get you more money for this property. And the guy said, well, if you get me more money for the property, then I'll work with the agent. So I just don't want to pay the commission at, you know, $525 that, you know, you guys are going to charge. So he said, okay, well, I'll do the market analysis for it to see what happens. He went back and did the market analysis, and all of his numbers, it came back at $625, $100,000 more. So he called him back up and he said, look, I think you can get a lot more money from this. Let's work together. The guy said, okay, well, if you think I can get $625, you can list my property. Went out there, listed it. 2 days later, full price offer, sold it within 35 days.
Wow.
That seller, for sale by owner, was risking something he didn't know he was risking. Okay, now I'm not saying that always happens. I mean, it usually doesn't. It doesn't happen very often, but that was a very interesting story because he came back and, you know, 35 days later he was paid on a $625,000 listing for being able to bring more value.
Is that because of the market? The
The
seller's market? If it was turned around and it was a buyer's market, he'd probably only get the 500 and something?
in that particular case, he just had put it on and he had no clue real estate wise. As a for sale by owner, he was just testing the waters, see what it was. He was basing it off of some of the homes that he had known. So, you know, he had put it on for that, ended up making him a lot more money. So, but even in that case, let's just say, you know, we know that for sale by owners, if they don't have a market analysis, they may or may not know the value of their home. That's a great way to get into the appointment is, let's do a market analysis on your home. Make sure you're priced right. How do you know your price is right? See if we can reduce that risk a little bit. Make sense? Yeah.
I just had a question on the order that you put it in.
Mm-hmm.
In an ideal presentation, is that how that should build?
No, not necessarily. I don't think that.
I mean, I know it doesn't have to, but in an ideal presentation.
Well, usually they're not going to close before you connect with them. I mean, what I want you to look at here is these are things that need to be part of your presentation. I used to write this on a 3x5 card, and I put it in my car, and after I left the presentation, I would sit down and I would evaluate what I did here. Because I look at it and say, okay, did I connect, whether I got the listing or I didn't get the listing? Because it was a great place to review. What part were they not safe? Sometimes you can visually see that they're feeling risk. You can visually see them do it. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have to really look and figure out, okay, what did I say that made them a little bit questionable? So I would say that it's not necessarily in order, but these two are probably the most. I'd say connection first and then close last. These ones can be kind of, as you'll see as what we were talking about, your value might be presented within separating from the competition. And trust, this is pretty much developed through your conversation, things that you say. So this can be statistics, this can be your stats. You can show them what you're capable of doing. So I would even use, you know, Century 21 stuff. Century 21, you know, #1 brokerage in the world, or #1 office in the world for selling homes. We can show them those things. This helps reduce risk and build trust. Make sense? Okay, so did that answer your question?
Yeah.
So those are the 6 things we want to do that. So now we're going to move into the presentation. Presentation structure that I'm going to give you is what we found to work really well. There's 2 objectives in a listing presentation. What are the 2 objectives that we want to make sure happen? When you go into a presentation, what are the 2 things that we want to make sure happens?
That they've been pre-qualified.
You want to make sure they're pre-qualified, so you want to do that before you actually get there.
You need to, you've also pre-qualified, but you also need to know their motivation. Ask all the questions and what's most important to them about the sale of their home.
Yeah, you gotta get to know them a little bit. You gotta make sure you know the process. So when we start a presentation, I've got 2 objectives for us. Okay, the first objective we want to make sure is that they choose me. And the second objective that we've got here is to choose a price. Those are the 2 things that we're trying to accomplish in our listing presentation. They need to be able to choose me as their agent, and they need to be able to choose, we need to be able to choose a price. What do you think the seller wants to know first?
Price.
Why?
That's why you're there. That's what they're looking for there.
That's why they think that you're there. That's what they want to know.
Yep.
So when you start a presentation, what do they want to talk about? Price. Okay? Those that have been on listing presentations before, have you ever been in there in the first 5 minutes and they ask you this question? Okay? You ever been in a situation where you decided to go down this route? Have you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what happens when you address number 2 before you address number 1?
Lose it. You lose the ability to lead them because they're focused on truly, ultimately, why they think you're there. It's nothing more than price. It's not getting them to focus on what you're truly there, rather you can even sell the property or not. Yeah.
They have one question. You've answered the question. Now you're wasting their time.
It's typically for me been for family. Let's just be quiet and listen to what I have to say.
When you're dealing with your family. Okay, so these are the 2 objectives that we want. Eric.
I was just going to say, I know the 2 times I've gone on listing presentations where I went down that road. The one I've continued to follow up with weekly, and he's now blocked my number. If you go down that road, like, it's really just, you're done.
Yeah.
Part of the steps that you've got, choose me and choose the price, I've always liked to attach me with the price. So you have to go me first, because if you just throw out a price, that's anybody's price, everybody can get it. But I like to attach me with that price, saying that in a discount broker or somebody that's just got their license last week, they can't do this. All of these things that I'm going to tell you gives us that price.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yep. Okay, the other part is this first one is going to be the bulk of your presentation. When they've decided that you are the one for the job, move into the price and close and be done. Okay? When we try to start here and then revert back up to the me, it's not going to work. They're going to push it out. So these are the 2 objectives of the listing presentation. I want to make sure that you and I are going to work together before we decide what price we're going to work together with. Okay? Remember, once I've rapport, once I've connected, they're going to allow me to lead. Do I want them setting the price?
Yes.
Yeah.
I want them setting the price?
No.
Yes.
It's their house.
Okay?
How reasonable do they want to be?
Okay? Let's talk about this for a second.
Yes and no. I mean, when you present the price and you're going over comparables, and you've already, at least I do, I get their agreement on me before I go on. Because then it doesn't really matter. You know, well, let's talk about price. No, I want to know that I'm the right agent for the job before we move on. And if we can agree on price, are we going to be working together? So that's the route you take. Then, after you've got their commitment on you, then you go into comps, and then you go in, and the presentation of that is just as important as any of the other things, in my opinion. As long as you've accomplished the trust and all those things. But anyway, so you go into the price, and you ask them if they just saw what you did. Because you'll get a pretty good gauge of where they're at.
Right.
And high price usually means low motivation. You know, so so you can really dig out some objections, or you can really dig out the root of what they're doing by what they see.
Yeah.
And then it puts it together kind of in a controlling conversation if you have them show their cards. So if you go over comps and you say, well, based on these comps, where do you think we need to be? You know, they're going to say two things. They're going to give you an answer. They can say, well, that's why I have you here. And then I say, well, and then I say, well, I know what I think, but I want to make sure that you're seeing the same thing I am. What did you see? Right. And then if they give you that price, then you can tell where they're at.
Yeah.
And then and then you can go off of, and then that'll tell you where to go. That'll kind of gives you the roadmap of what is going to happen next.
Yeah, and I'll show you how we do that. What I want to be clear on, because we've talked about this before, and these are two different issues that we're talking about. One is we want them to decide on the price, but remember something. Who's leading this? Are they leading it, or am I leading it?
The way you're stating it sounds like they're leading it. The way you stated the question to me.
Stating the question. So if they decide on the price, they're leading the conversation.
Yes.
I want them to accept it. Here.
Asking them what they think gives them a little sense of power.
And buy-in.
Yeah, and all this. Yeah, exactly. And then, like if they say, well, I think I should get 250, and every comp says 230. All of a sudden, they don't realize it's a trap. Because then you kind of just lean forward. So tell me, so why do you think your home is worth $30,000? I mean, it just puts
right. So
right,
you want them to come to the realization that your price is the price, but I want them to realize that my price is really their price. Does that make sense?
So
my price is their price. I don't want them to come away from the conversation saying, well, Jason says that it's this price.
Yeah.
Right. No, I don't want that. But what I want them to say is, based on what Jason said, the price is this, which is my price. Do you see the difference? Okay, so you got to take, you want them to take ownership of what this process is. So you're going to choose me, choose the price. Okay, so when we start off our presentation, this is the easiest way to get into a presentation, because the objection I hear the most is, I just don't know where to start it. Because have you ever gone on a presentation and they meet you at the door, or they meet you out in the yard, and they're super excited to show you their house, and they're like, oh, come on in here. Hey, so what price did you think that my home should sell for? As you're walking through the front door, they're leading you into that process. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do, the first step, is what we call a tap. Okay, this is think, acknowledge, and promise. So you think of all the great presentations you've heard before. They're thanking you for being there, thanking for your time, thanking for you sacrificing whatever you want to do. They're thanking you because they're grateful for it. When you're grateful for things, one, it disperses fear. There's a lot of fear when you first come into the home. There's anxiety within ourselves, and there's also anxiety in the others. When you're thanking somebody, you bring in gratitude. Acknowledge what they've done. Acknowledge their house. Acknowledge what things look like. Everyone wants to be complimented on something. And then promise. Why are you there? What is your purpose there? Give them something to start to trust you, start to look at it. This is what I'm going to do. Now, if you're going to promise something and then you don't deliver that, you're going to lose trust. Okay? So, thank, acknowledge, promise. And then there's one other one that you can throw in here, but I want you to be really careful with this. And this is a little bit of humor. Okay? Humor can go a long ways to connecting rapport. It also can put up a real solid wall. If you are trying to be funny and you connect, and you're in the middle of connecting with somebody, and you hit a nerve with them that's not good, that wall's going to come up, and you're going to have it. So I want you to be really careful here. This works really well if you can throw in some humor into this first, your intro. It's usually safe if you're doing it against yourself. Don't ever do humor that pertains to their property, their family, things that you think that are funny that they may or may not know is funny. Does that make sense? Okay, so let me give you an example. So I show up and I say, you know what, thank you for having me over. I know your time is very valuable. I appreciate you having me over today. And I just want to promise you the time we spend will be the most valuable time that we can spend in regards to getting your home sold. And then I move forward. It's usually what I say. Okay? I just want to acknowledge them, thank them, and go forward. Now let's go back to the scenario I was telling you before. What if you show up to the house and they start walking you through the house and they start having this conversation? Okay? Can you go down that path?
Yes.
Yes. You're not going to stop them. But here's the thing. When they start asking you these questions, you're not answering all the questions, but you're just having a conversation with them. You can build rapport with them. So what I do is I usually will come in, I'll have a conversation with them, I'll just introduce myself. I will usually do this right when I first meet them. I'll thank, acknowledge, and promise them something right then. Then I'll go do what they want to do, and then I'll sit down at the table. When I sit down at the table, this is my key for me to say my presentation's about ready to start. So I'll sit down at the table. Once they get down at the table, and I just say, you know what, once again, I just want to thank you for your time today. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. I know you're busy, and I promise you I'm not going to waste any of your time. Then I can start into it. Okay? So that's number one. Number two. Number two is what we call the game plan. Okay, so we're going to intro and then we're going to go into the game plan. So I want you to think of this in the whole presentation. We want to start out with, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. The next step is I'm going to tell you. And then the final step is I'm going to tell you what I told you. Does that make sense? I'm going to tell you what I'm telling you. This is the game plan right here. All I'm doing here is going to give them an outline of what our presentation is. This will make it easier for you to actually give a presentation and not just go all over the place. So game plan. So usually what I say is, let me just give you a quick outline of what we're going to cover today. Okay? Number one, we're going to talk about your needs and wants. Number two, we're going to talk about your expectations, the marketing and exposure that I do. Number three, we're going to talk about the market and pricing. And number four is sign some paperwork. Okay, so that's my game plan for this presentation. I need to know what they want. I need to know what they expect. We need to talk about price. And then I want them to sign some paperwork. That make sense? Okay, when I talk about this, I'm not going to start right here talking about their needs. This game plan is just explaining to them what we're going to do. So for me, it's I'm just going to give you an outline of what we're going to cover today. First, I'm going to discuss your needs, basically what you're trying to accomplish by selling your home. Second, we'll talk about your expectations in regard to selling your home. I'll show you my action plan, and we'll look at ways we can not only meet your expectations, but hopefully we can exceed them. Third, we'll talk about market conditions and pricing. That way we know what your value is in the market, so we can get you top dollar for your home. And fourth, if you feel like I'm the right agent for the job, then we'll be able to get some paperwork signed and get your home on the market. Does that sound good to you? That's how I run through it. Does that make sense? I get an acknowledgement from them that this is what we're going to cover. Okay? Any problems with that? Okay, what if they say, oh, well, wait, I'm not going to sign some paper?
That's fine.
What if they want to
I've
sleep
got
on it?
one like that right now.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want information. I don't want to sign anything. Really?
Yeah. Okay, so let's say that you have a situation like that, okay, and we're right here in this process. If you're in the game plan, we're just explaining it, you haven't given them any information. You haven't given them value. You haven't given them, you haven't separated yourself from the competition. You still haven't reduced risk for them. They may or may not trust you. So we haven't really done anything to this point right now.
Question.
Yeah.
Instead of saying sign paperwork, can't we just say and then we'll wrap up at the end? Like, or do we have to?
You can say this any way you want. Here's the one caution with let's wrap up at the end. I want them to know there's paperwork involved. I want them to know we're going to be doing something. I'm setting that expectation. Okay?
It's a preemptive strike. I mean, you're telling them what's going to happen. Plus, keep in mind, you've already done your pre-qualification, if everybody's doing that, and you've asked them, if I can convince you that I'm the right agent for the job, are you prepared to list your home with me?
Yeah.
I mean, they've already told you they're going to. You know, they've already established that. So if you get there and they say, well, I just want information, then you need to go back to your
the pre-qualification.
The pre-qual, and if you haven't asked all the right questions and you haven't dug as deep as you need.
Yeah, because they did something pulled out. Eric.
Something I realized that helped me was that even though you're telling them that that's the plan, that's not quite the plan. Because before you even get to market and price, you're going to have them committed to you and working with you.
Well, remember,
You're asking.
I've already established my objectives.
Right.
Okay? If I come in here and I say, hey, you know what, thank you for having me over, I promise this will be the best time we have, and they say, hey, you know what, I'm ready to go, let's just get this signed. Do you think I'm going to do this?
No.
Okay? So in a presentation, when you have the right and you're ready to close, when you're ready to do it,
That's the best.
then do it.
Yeah, right.
Be done.
Close it.
See, sometimes we think that just because I have an outline and I have a 5-page document that I want to make sure that you understand, and this is really hard for analyticals because I'm analytical, and I feel like if I'm not comfortable,
Then you should.
then you shouldn't be comfortable. And there's a whole bunch of personalities out there that are just fine. When I feel like you're bringing me value and I trust you and I'm ready to go and there's no more risks, I'm ready to go. All I'm doing now is convincing them not to. Make sense?
Convince them not to.
When somebody's ready to sign
Yeah, you're right.
and you don't do it and you keep going, you are talking yourself out of that deal.
Talking them out of it.
Yes. Did you have a question?
Oh, yeah. Just how you said, when you walk in, they talk about the price, and then you're saying, well, once you go down that road, you'll be stuck there.
Mm-hmm.
You avoid that and go to choose me. How about when you're giving your game plan, and they do talk about signing? They say,
Yeah.
well, I understand.
Yeah, so when we talk right here.
That and get to somewhere else and still acknowledge that they brought it up.
Yeah, so you got to remember that what we want to make sure we're doing, this is why we script this. Because when I present this, I don't want to give them a chance to talk about it. All I'm doing is telling you what we're going to talk about today. So if you say, well, what's the price of my home? I just said, well, we'll talk about marketing pricing and we'll look at what your value is compared to the market so we can get you top value for the home. So what do you think my value is? You know, it's a great question, and we'll definitely talk about that as we go through it. Because I don't want to talk about it right here. They're going to lead me if I allow them to do that.
I've done that this part hundreds of times. I mean, if you're confident and you know what you're doing, they never, ever interrupt you in that spot.
Especially if they know all you're doing is all I'm doing is giving you an outline.
And also, as you practice, I mean, I've practiced thousands of times to go out on 100 of them or 200 or whatever that's them. Confidence. I mean, it gives you that confidence. There is no way if you go in there and you're doing what you've practiced 1,000 times and you have confidence going in, you're going the game plan, they don't interrupt you.
They don't.
They just don't. There's no, they just don't.
They can fill it. You're leading.
I'm going, I'm taking control here. I mean, enough of the small talk, we're sitting down.
Right.
I mean,
Which is exactly why you start with this. Because what I was saying is it's very difficult to control the conversation when you come in on somebody else's turf. Okay? So I'll talk to them. I will visit around, I'll look at their house. When I'm ready to give my presentation, and I don't start my presentation until I'm ready to give my presentation. When I'm ready to give my presentation, we'll sit down at the table and I will start here. I will not start here. I will not start in the presentation. I start right back here. Even if I thanked them 20 times before that, I will sit down. This is a key for me mentally because I practice it so many times. This is my mental key that says you are ready to give a presentation. So showtime, right? Yep. Okay? So I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to say, let me give you an outline of what we're going to cover today. First thing we're going to cover is basically what, the first thing we're going to talk about is your needs and wants. I want to know exactly what you're looking to do to get your home sold. The second thing we're going to look at is your expectations in regard to marketing and selling your home. I'm going to show you my action plan, and we're going to look at ways that we can not only meet your expectations, but we can exceed them. Okay? Third, we're going to look at market pricing, the market and pricing. That way we know what your value is in the market, so we can get you top dollar for the home. And last, if everything looks good, you feel like I'm the right person for the job, we'll put together some paperwork and get started. Does that make sense?
Is it worth throwing in something there, kind of similar to Mike Ferry's 1-minute presentation, like maybe, unless you're ready to do that now, type of a, I don't know, I mean, I'm just throwing it out there.
You'll feel, I mean, if you're closing right here, you probably can fill this already there. I mean, I had a friend of mine, I went in, I started to do a presentation with him, and I said, well, let me share with you what I'm going to do to get your home sold. And he goes, Jason, stop. I don't care what you do. I know you're a professional. You'll do the right things to get your home sold. And as soon as he said that, I was like, great. Well, are you ready to get started then? And he's like, yeah, send me the papers. You know, so it ended that way. Yeah.
And again, pre-qual. I mean, you know who you're dealing with during that period of time. If you ask all the right questions, then you dig even a little deeper, you find out their personality types, and you'll know who you're going to be presenting to. If it's a driver, then there's a good chance that they might do that.
Yeah, and that's why I make this just straight to the point. You see, I've given this my exact one 3 times now, so that's what I give. In the book, you can look at some other ways to present these, but these are really what I want to cover today. At any point in this process, if they're ready to go, I'm good with it. Now, let's say right here, they're like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to, I don't know if we're going to sign some papers or not. They get a little bit apprehensive here. Here's the reality. Will I ask them to sign papers if they're not feeling 100% comfortable that I can do the job?
No.
No. So when I say, I can promise you, and I do this on the phone when I'm prospecting, I'll say, look, I promise you, I will not ask you to sign a contract unless you feel 100% comfortable and confident that I can get the job done. Is that fair enough? As Rick would say.
So, like, as a new agent, how do you, like, because I get that if they're not sold on me, then if I go into market price, I've lost it, and I'm leaving with them before it's sold. So, if you feel like you're at a dead-end road at expectation, and, like,
okay, so before we get into that, because we're going to get into that, but what I want you to understand here is, are we at a dead-end road right now? Have we presented anything?
No, that's just the outline.
No, all we told them is we're going to talk about this. So now we're going to move on to number 3. Okay, so number 3 is ask questions. And in this process, we're going to make sure we repeat and affirm them. Okay, we're going to ask great questions. A great presentation is a presentation of asking questions. It's a series of questions. If we are not asking questions and we're telling, we are not going to get their buy-in for the price, and we're not going to get them to understand it. So we're going to ask great questions. Okay, so now I want you to look at this. So I said, okay, this is what we're going to cover. Then I throw in a line right here at the end so that I can make sure that they don't throw me off track. What I like to say is, so I say, does that sound good to you? They usually will say yes, because I just told them what I'm going to do. They'll say yes. And then I'll ask them, I'll say, great, so before we get started, is there any specific questions that you want to make sure I cover tonight in the presentation? Okay, that way if they want to ask me about commission, they want to ask me about price, they want to ask me about that. So, Cheyenne, ask me one of the questions. So is there any questions that you want to make sure that I cover tonight?
How much is your commission?
Commission, perfect, we'll definitely cover that. What else? Is there anything else you'd like me to cover?
How are you going to expose my property?
Expose your property. Oh, we'll definitely talk about that. Perfect, expose your property. Is there anything else you want me to cover? Perfect. So I don't care what questions she asks me, because when I have my little lead in right here that just says, you know, what other questions do you have? Because you'll see this, and especially in role plays, where you'll be doing your normal presentation and somebody will be like, so what is your commission? And it'll try to throw you off. I don't want to be thrown off. I'm controlling this. So when I say, great, is that good for you? Yeah, that's fantastic. And then maybe they'll say that before, and they'll say, well, what's your commission though? Say, oh, that's a great question. And I usually just take my pen out and I'll write it down. This is a concern for theirs. I want to talk about it. Commission, perfect. We'll cover that for sure. Anything else? Now, if I hesitate and I don't just say, what's next, I'm going to get into an awkward situation where they're going to want me to answer it. But I don't want to answer it right now. So I'm not deflecting it. I'm just saying, yep, we're talking about that, because I am just giving my outline. Okay, now we're asking questions. Now we are in the presentation. So what's first in our step?
And they really like you writing it down because they know you're listing and that you'll for sure cover it.
Yep. Yep. So for two reasons. I mean, one is I really do want to make sure that all their issues are taken care of, and if it is an issue, we want to talk about it. Okay. So now I'm into the presentation. What's my first step? What questions am I going to ask regarding?
Where are they moving to?
Their needs. Their needs.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Now we're just going to follow our game plan. This is what we decided. So now I'm going to ask questions in regards to number one. Okay. I'm going to ask as many questions as I need to in regards to number one. Needs and wants. Okay. So what are some great questions for needs and wants? Do you absolutely have to sell this home? It's one I like to ask, because they might not. So what are you ultimately trying to accomplish by selling this home? What will selling this home do for you and your family? Where are you moving to next? When would you like to be in your new home?
What if they say
Your
you don't
first question-
absolutely have to?
Your first question is, do you absolutely need to sell this home?
Yeah, do you absolutely have to sell this home?
Sure, I'm comfortable with that question.
You don't have to ask it. These are my questions.
Oh, okay.
But that's part of the script.
No.
That's why
Oh, I
he's
know.
saying that.
No, I'm giving you an
I'm
out.
asking you why you asked that. though.
Why do I ask that question? Because what if they don't have to sell it?
They're not very motivated.
Like,
Then you say, well, you can leave now then if you like.
no, if they say, if I ask them, I said, do you absolutely have to sell this home? And they're like, usually what they say, if they don't have to, they're like, well, no, we could probably stay if we couldn't get it sold. But I want to know that. So I don't ask that offensively as far as, do you absolutely need to sell the home?
I think it's a difference between have to and want to.
Yeah.
And a question how it's asked. It's a question, do you absolutely want to sell your home?
Oh, so
So I think you just change it up a little bit to make it a little less fractional, more comfortable.
Yeah, I'm just reading my questions to you, because realize we're having a conversation here.
We need to keep in mind too, that at this point of you're already 20, 25 minutes in from being at the door. You've created enough rapport at that point. You've shown your confidence. You've gone in and you've done a lot to this point. Asking that question is natural. If you're thinking of it as if you go in cold and just start asking them.
Yeah.
You've already sat down at the table. Their dogs hump your leg. I mean, the kids throwing up. All this stuff is already. You're already committed. You're already involved with these people already, and it's not a cold question. It's a warm question, and if you do this part right, they know you care, and that's the most important thing.
And realize, see, we're almost out of time, and we're just starting the presentation, but what I want you guys to understand is this whole lead up is going to set you up for success through the presentation. Because now all we're doing, so we're going to ask questions about what they need. I want you to spend most of your presentation right there. And then we're going to move into number 4. which is plan of action. Okay, I want you to have a plan of action, things that you're going to do. But I only really want you to talk about maybe 3 to 5. It might be 20 things you do. Pick 3 to 5 of them that you know really, really well and present those. Once we talk about our plan of action, number 5 is we're going to get into the market. Okay, but I'm going to draw a line right here. This is what we call a temperature check. At this point in the presentation, before I go into pricing, they need to choose me. They need to make sure that I'm the right person for the job. If they don't feel like I'm the right person for the job, then you need to go back into these questions. You need to start asking more questions about these two right here, because this is what we've been talking about. We've been talking about number 1 and number 2. If we get to that point and they haven't been convinced that you're the right person for the job, moving into prices is not going to work for you. So the question I like to, so I'll get into that one. What I like to do is just kind of give them a temperature check of just how you feel about what I've shared with you so far. Do you feel like I'm the right person for the job? See where they're at. Because they might just say right there, yeah, you know, I feel good. I feel comfortable. Great. Do you feel I can sell your home? So just do a little check right here. Do a close, trial close to see where you're at. And if everything looks good.
So it's got to be 100%. It can't be like 90, 95 that they really want to choose you.
So here's the thing. Okay, well, I'm not really sure if I want to list with you. Okay, does it do us any good to talk about the price?
If they're not 100%.
Yeah, if they're not sold on me. Does it do me any good to give them a price? No, because you haven't separated yourself. Remember, what happens when you haven't separated yourself? The only thing they can separate is the commission, right? And the price. So we run into a problem where an agent comes in and decides they're going to buy a listing. How do you buy a listing?
Overprice it.
Overprice it or
Discount
it. Okay. Do you want to overprice your listing? Do you want to discount your listing? Your commission? No. So don't go in here until you've got up here. So if they say that, if they say, well, I'm not really sure, then you want to revisit this. You say, okay, well, you know, I can understand that. Tell me a little bit more about that. What is it that's either not clear, or what do you need more?
What are you hesitant about? What are you hesitant about?
Yeah, what's the hesitant?
Is there any reason you wouldn't listen?
Yeah, wouldn't listen with me. Because that's what we're closing. And so at that part, once I ask that, and they say yes or no, I say, so is it safe to assume that if we can come to agreement on price, then we can work together? And if they say yes.
Okay, so I got a question about that. So if you're asking them about the price, would you also ask them, will you agree to lower your price if we don't have anybody that's looking at your home?
All pricing conversations need to happen down here. I don't.
Yeah, at that time.
Yeah,
but I mean,
yes.
Are you going to ask them, are you willing to lower your price if nobody's looking at it?
Yeah, if we're having a pricing conversation, yeah, when we're talking about pricing strategy, just a minute, Rick, I want to get through the rest of this. If we're talking about pricing strategies and all of that, that's all down in here.
Right.
Okay? I don't even want to touch this area until I know they're willing to work with me. Because if they're not willing to work with me, this does not even matter. Okay? So that's and then the last one, number 6, this is where we're going to close. Okay? And we'll kind of weave through that process. At another time, maybe on a morning set or something, I'll actually just do the presentation so that you can see how it works. But what I want you guys to understand, this is the whole process. This is from start to finish. You spend 90% of your time above this line, you're going to have more success than if you start under this line and expect to get better results. Does that make sense? Okay? Yeah. So that would be the presentation.
Just a thought
That's
back
great.
to
Yep.
Stephanie's question as far as asking them to sign a reduction. That may not come up because you're priced right.
Mm-hmm.
So just to clarify, you may not want to go there, but you're going to know where you're at in the presentation when you get into the pricing strategy.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
you're not gonna ask-
and realize, once you've chosen me, and Stephanie, great. Now that you've chosen me, let's work together to figure out what the best possible price is to get your home sold. And now we're on the same page. Now we're working together. Yeah.
And if you agree to take a little bit overpriced, if it's something you're willing to do for
There you
them,
go.
you'd have them pre-sign a price reduction that after 10 days, if you don't have any offers or enough showings, you
Yeah.
reduce it.
Well, and that's this conversation here where I was asking you who decides the price. Let's say they decided the price and you're not comfortable with that price, then you're going to have that conversation. Okay?
Well, I
But
brought this up to Rick about anything that was under to the 200, remember
Yeah,
that?
Remember that?
Oh my gosh, 20,000 more than what I thought they could ever get.
yeah.
That's
Well,
the point of
and
that.
sometimes in this market, you know,
Yeah.
as agents, look, we're trying to reduce their risk. We're trying to see where we're at. We're not perfect. Remember, if we had a crystal ball and we knew what the price was, we just list them at that price and be done.
Correct.
But what we want to do is minimize their risk, get them sold on using you, and then work on the pricing. See, I think this is the part that we get mixed up with because they want to talk about this. But if you don't
So they
connect
have
with
to trust
them,
what you're going to say, then number 4. They got to trust what you're going to say is the right thing in order to get to the...
yeah,
But it's not your price.
but it's not my price. It's your price. But I'm going to lead you to my price.
Well, don't you bring a CMA anyway
Oh,
Yeah.
and show them
That's
what
the
you
market,
have?
not
Of
Jason.
course, yeah, that's the market. And I never presented it as, this is this is my price, this is where, oh, I can sell this. And you'll hear some agents say, oh, I guarantee you I can get that. I'm not gonna say that.
If you get to that line and they're just not indicating that they're gonna hire you, is that
Mhm.
just when you just,
I will revisit this. I'll come back up here and say, look, you know, and there's other techniques that we can use, you know, that we can teach you. In your script book, there's a section that calls a master close. That's great for just trying to figure out where we stand. You know, if you don't feel comfortable with me, if I say, would you work with me, and you said no, what advantage do I have coming down here?
oh, no, that's what I'm saying. I was just saying, at what point do you walk away? Obviously,
So
you're not gonna
up
go-
here,
Yeah, how close to the market?
up here, you'll have one of two things happen. You'll either realize that you didn't pre-qual them enough, and and you should not have been at the appointment. And at that point, you might as well just
Pack it up.
pack it up and go. And there's been some times where I'm just like, well, that makes sense. I hand them the CMA. Some people won't hand them the CMA. I just hand them the CMA and I say, you know,
Good luck.
good luck with that.
Feel free to give me a call.
Yeah, so for me, if there is no commitment here to move forward, this is my presentation. This section right here, this is just the details of what they're gonna list the home for. And this might take a while if they're analytical and I need to go through numbers and stuff like that. But even in analytical, look, if what I say makes sense, and they might come back to me and say, well, I don't know what the price is. I don't know if I'd list with you. Well, then I'm gonna come back and say, great. Assuming that the price is the price that you want, and you can net what you need, would there be any reason you wouldn't want to work with me? No, I think we'd work with you, Jason. Fantastic. As soon as they give me that okay, it's like this line disappears, and then I can move down in here. But this is, trust me, when you go on your next appointment, if you haven't been on a lot of appointments, when you get done with the appointment, ask yourself which area you spent your time in, and it will be an indicator of the result. So, Eric.
So what you're saying, if you get to that line and you've gone through that process a couple times, where you kept asking questions, you just can't get them to commit to you, just hand them the CMA and walk away?
That's what you said.
Let me just ask you a question. If you get to that line and they're not convinced that you can sell a home, and you go through the rest of your presentation for another half an hour, do you think you're going to convince them with numbers?
No.
People make decisions based on emotion, and then they back them up by facts. Okay? I want you to make your decision by emotion, and I'm going to back it up with facts. Okay? I'm going to show you why you can work with me through those numbers. So when you say, okay, I have gone through this so many times, and now I can't do it, and I'm just going to hand you my CMA and walk out.
Well, I'm not saying like obviously you handle it better than that, but
We like how you said it.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day,
I do have to admit,
That's what he said.
I do have to admit, when I was a new agent, I did walk out on one, and I got a call from Rob the next day. But the reality is I'm going to just come to this point, and if I'm going to stay in this arena until I've decided one of two things. One, I didn't pre-qualify them and they're not going to sign. At that point, there's no point in the conversation. Or two, I'm going to stay here until they understand. Because if they don't choose me, it doesn't makes no sense to move forward. That's when you beg. Yeah. Okay, we're over time. Thanks for coming in. If you have any more questions, I kind of imagine this one needs to be a little bit longer just so we can go more into it. But
That's what Russ always says. We need to spend more time.
so, thanks guys for coming. Hopefully it was good.
It was good, thank
Do you
you.
like the three questions or the three options that you heard tonight? One, you may choose to list your home with two, you may choose not to. Three, I may choose.
So I like that if I feel there's apprehension with the seller. Like if I feel they're nervous, they're like off guard, and like, oh, I'm not comfortable with the salesperson here. And I want them to just feel comfortable and say, look, one of three things will happen tonight. And that way I can just be like, look, no pressure. And I'll say that. Yep. Thank you for coming. So that's where I'll throw it in. So when we look at my presentation,
Should I not have it?
no, I like that's. So I'm giving you words that I use. This is my presentation that I created for myself. So as you can see, I take this on presentations. These are my questions. So I look at it and say, I've taken the Mike Ferry one, and I've taken the Century 21, and I've taken things I like in the Mike Ferry, and I've taken things in the Century 21, and I'm trying to merge them. Right. Because look, like you'll get down to my pricing strategy. Tell me if you've heard this. Okay. I prepared a comparative market analysis. The purpose of comparative market analysis to determine the value of your home and the value of the buyer. You heard that, right? Okay, so I like that saying. I like that. Now, depending on what they say there, I have right here, if they don't understand it, I'm going to do that card because it's simple and it's really easy to explain.
20,000.
Yeah, but let's say that they're, oh yeah, that makes sense. For me, I use something different. I use a value versus price thing for me. So I can ask them a question, who determines the price of your home? Who determines the price? The seller does. No, the seller determines the price. Who determines the value of your home? The buyer. So if I want to increase value, I either got to lower the price or add more features and benefits
So
at the
you
same
go
price.
there's one way is fantasy land and the other way is.
So I don't do this, but here's the thing, a lot of people have used just the Mike Ferry one and been great with it, and they're fine with it. For me, I'm a little bit more.
I like the idea of Frankenstein.
Yeah, so
you carry that actual,
Yeah.
it looks like you have too.
yeah, and I just add notes to it, and then, every time I'm adding something in my presentation, you can see, like, this is my opening. I said this a couple times today. I appreciate you taking time to be with me. I know time is valuable. It used to be a lot more wordy. And then I said it once in a presentation, and I walked out and said, that was wordy. And so I crossed off that whole line right there. And now I just come down to here. And then I find that if they're more of a driver, I skip these two lines and I add this new one that I added because I said, I just promised that tonight I'm 100% committed to getting you the best information.
Do you think that, well, in theory, you could have a driver packet?
They don't believe you can do it, you gotta swing back around and find out.
And an emotive packet?
Yeah.
Or you could have an emotive
So
presentation?
I always prepare for an analytical that I present to whoever I have, because an analytical needs more information. So in my bag, I'm going to have all my comparables. I'm going to have all my CMA and all my stuff. And I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to figure out where they're at. If I'm not talking to an analytical, if I'm talking to a driver, I'm not going to pull out my graphs and I'm not going to pull out my stuff. I just will leave it in my bag and I'll say, look, the price is, you got a price here, the price here, these are the comparables for it, and I'll pull out one sheet that says these are what's sold. And then if they have questions, then I might pull out more. But too much information for people gets them
Who's the hardest?
risky.
Who's the hardest to close, sorry?
It depends. For me, it's drivers. It's drivers because I can talk all day long with expressives, amiables. I have a sensitive side to me, so I can talk with them, and then I'm analytical, so I can geek out on numbers all day long with an analytical. A driver, the problem I have with a driver is they want. I think that so you're a driver, you want information from me, I start to tell you, and you're satisfied. But in my mind, I think, well, he doesn't know it all yet. How could he be satisfied? There's no way he could know. He couldn't. He can't choose me because he doesn't know. But in his mind, he's like, I've had enough. I'm done.
If he hits what I'm looking for,
yeah,
I'm done.
Then you're done.
Just let me sign something.
So for me, it's harder for a driver just because I have to step out. I got to step out of my box and just say, if he says he's good, regardless of whether I think he needs an explanation. And in my ego and my mindset gets involved with it.
But you don't know enough yet.
Yes, because here's the problem. 2 weeks into the listing, he says something like, well, if I would have covered my presentation, he would have known that, now he would have been upset. In my own mind, I'm thinking, I need to cover that, I need to cover it. But for him, I don't need to cover that because remember what I said at the very start. As soon as they're convinced, the more I talk, I'm just talking them out.
But if you think you have a driver, and then they say they're good, but you don't really have a driver, you have someone who's wishy-washy, then you just screwed up.
Yeah, well then you'll get here and they'll say no.
Yeah.
Even an amiable who will set an appointment with you every time because they don't want to say no. They'll set an appointment and then they'll cancel it by text because they don't have to actually talk to you. Right? So that's why if you ever have an amiable and you're calling to confirm an appointment, don't text it. You will lose the appointment every time. Okay? But you'll get here, and even an amiable will not proceed.
I called first, didn't answer.
When are you going to do your...
Then he returned the text.
Yeah.
When are you going to do the actual presentation?
I could probably do it on Friday for morning instead. Yeah, I could probably do it Friday.
Eric was telling me they do role plays here in the morning.
At 7:30. He does
every morning, or is it
every morning, but on Mondays his listing presentation.
Just keep after it. Yeah, Monday mornings, we're running this listing presentation. This is what we like to do, every Monday.
Okay.
7:30?
Well, I'll be here 7:30? 7:30?
I was just going to ask you about
7:30.
Zap. I still want to know about Zap.
Yeah, the one to talk about that would be with Russ. And Russ is in St. George today, but he'll be back tomorrow.
How do I find Russ?
So his office, I'll show you where his office is, but it's just the
Russ
one.
Orchard?
Yeah, Russ Orchard. He's the one. He's the one that
I just remember Katie saying a name.
Yeah, he's the one. He knows it all. He runs the system for us. So I don't
He's the
know.
tech guy?
Not the tech guy, but he's the education and the tools. So like any of those C21 tools, he's going to start teaching those.
What is it, the C and...
Like Business Builder, CMA Toolkit, yeah, all of that is.
Leave it up. Don't rush it. Might want to review it tomorrow.
What's that?
I got some questions for you on it, so don't.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fine. You're like, I don't agree with you on that.
Let's get together. And
I saw your dream board.
Yeah.
I saw a CRF 450 on there.
Yes.
Is that true? Have
You
seen
know, I'm almost convinced that the 250 might
We'll have to go ride it sometime.
So I have a 1979 500 Yamaha right now.
I thought I had an old one.
No, it's old. But yeah, that's the one I want.
I had a 2006 450 and I turned it into street legal, but it's a motocross bike, and so I geared it really low.
Presentation.
And I had to see
Oh,
it because I
15 minutes.
I was
Wow.
showing off for my buddies, but I'm not doing wheelies.
You did most of it on the phone?
Yeah,
It's because most of it was on the phone, right?
Katie was not happy. The new CRF 450 to 2017.
Questions?
Have you seen that one?
I haven't seen the 2017.
Nice.
Oh,
15 minutes is a good record.
If you're gonna get one, you gotta.
I tell myself.
Well, I want to get the new
That's
one.
what.
Yeah.
But
Good.
There's a guy that was
Yeah, but I
telling me
don't know if I
that
can sell it.
the two-stroke
You
is
can.
actually
You think
just as
so?
valuable.
If they follow the
But
pricing
it's not as
strategy,
sporty.
yes.
It's like,
It's
you
in a
know,
private lane in West Valley.
you gotta be really good at
Yeah.
throttle control and stuff. It's a lot
Yeah,
more work.
look,
on two-stroke.
I'll visit with
Way
you.
more. I've got it,
Okay.
because I grew up racing two-strokes, and then the four-strokes came along, and I hop on one, I'm like, oh my gosh, I could have come pro right here.
Yeah, that's why I want one of those. Yeah, I can go with your.
The new one is it has a new intake system where it's the air box is above it, and so it's like more directional where it's coming in from the top and flowing straight down, where the air bags on the ones prior were behind the fuel injection stuff in use.
Yeah.
Are you recording?
Oh, yeah. Will you turn it on? Yeah, this presentation needs to go a little longer than just an hour, but
That's what I wanted to discuss with you. So,